Bonjour mes amis, hi guys, collection review time, we are back. This time it's a collection review for Andrew and it's a very cool Rolex intensive story. We all love Rolex, don't we? And we're gonna learn a few things in this review, and a few things that you might not be able to tell by not knowing Andrew and by just looking at the pictures. So first things first, isn't it fun to see your collection on the tube, whether reviewed by me or somebody else? Suddenly the whole world can see it and share it. It feels to me like when I hear one of my favorite songs on the radio. Sure, I can listen to Freebird anytime I want in my phone, but when it's on the radio, I know that other people are listening to it and connecting with me through this, and yeah, we are social animals, so love these collection reviews. All right, so I'm not sure actually where Andrew lives. I think it's gonna be Singapore or Hong Kong. Anyway, Andrew tells me that he loves my watch safaris and the discussions with Johnny Guitar. As you heard in my last video, Johnny has been stuck in Europe. I think 7 flights got cancelled on him, and so he gave up on coming back because his wife is due fairly soon for their first baby. So maybe you can call the baby Rolex. That would be or Perpetual or Pepsi. That could be a cool name. Maybe not Coke. Okay, Johnny, you take care. And now Andrew's got mainly 7 watches. He's a Rolex fanboy at heart, by his own admission, and there's nothing wrong with that. They were amazing, and they're the solid watches. He says he does not have a strong desire to get into new sports Rolex at this point, and not sure where to take the collection next. Maybe take it to another brand, another level of horology, maybe Patek. He's only in his mid-30s, so he's got time, but he began collecting as early as middle school. He works in finance, always a good way to finance your watch hobby, and celebrated a great 2013. Yeah, back then the money was better, wasn't it? With his first luxury watch purchase from a Rolex AD. Now, as you know, if you went to an AD in 2013, you had the pick of the lot, and indeed he could have had a Kermit or a Hulk, but he didn't like either. And yeah, now that you see it everywhere on social media, tastes are converging, and you think you like it. I also had the chance to buy a Hulk when it was under, I don't know, I would say $13,000. I mean, still reasonable prices, and didn't really like the case itself. So there you go, and now I would like to have one. You see, I don't know if it's the effect of social media, or if it's really that it took time on me for the design to operate its charm. Some watches do that. Anyway, Andrew says, being young and ignorant, he rejected both the Kermit and the Hulk and wanted something more austere, and he went for the 116610 LN, so the date version of the Submariner with the maxi case. And he wore it to all the great occasions of his life at that moment, including his wedding and the birth of his son. Great watch. When I started in watches, I was offered one already when it was difficult to find them. It was 4 or 5 years ago, and it was in Germany. It was not in the window, but by talking to the lady, she pulled one out. And when I had it in my hands, I wasn't really used to spending that kind of money on a watch, and I didn't really like the shape of the case. And now when I see one in the flesh, I just love them. So you see, the maxi case took time for some people to get used to. Now I do like it, and it suits my wrist just fine. So later on, I got the Sea Dweller 4000, so that fills that hole. But I feel like I always think back at the time when I had that chance to buy it. If I did, maybe I would not have bought anything else. Maybe my watch journey would have been very different and influenced by buying that watch. Anyway, Andrew got it. He wore it for his wedding, the birth of his son. Great. 2 years later, 2015, the bug bit him again, and he wanted to go in a different brand at a good price level, and he found the Omega Speedmaster MK40, which you guys might know from the reissue by Hodinkee in 2017. You know, there's a whole story of Ben Clymer about that watch. But he got it before that, so he got it at a very fair price. Everything that Hodinkee talks about is hyped, of course, and I've seen a couple of those on sale at a vintage shop here actually not long ago. I'm not really sure about where the prices are. It's still reasonable, let's say. He was also back then considering the Explorer 2 Polo Dial 16570, which was Uptick's first Rolex, great watch, and also looked into the 16710 Coke. But he says, I can't tell you my reasoning. Yeah, you know, when we all look back at our watch journeys, I don't think many of us can tell our reasoning of 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago. You know, you live and learn, and you're also influenced over time by other people, of course. Huh? Yeah, now he says he wished he had purchased the other two, the Explorer 2 or the Coke. I think, yeah, he says he wanted to add diversity in the collection, and the MK40 came unpolished with the card and the box. And he was already wary of damaging the Submariner date. And yeah, he says now he was not appreciating what he had. He thought the Submariner was a heavy watch and didn't excite him back then. And the MK40 fit better under shirt sleeves. And yeah, he didn't want to damage the Submariner either, so he wore the MK40 for 2 years and then stopped wearing watches altogether for a year. And he was a bit, he says maybe he was tired of setting the day and the date on the MK40. You see how we go through phases, and then later on we just think, oh man, silly me. Anyway, he got married in 2018, and then the Rolex hype train was in full swing. And he wanted a pre-ceramic Coke GMT for quite some time, but the prices had gone a bit crazy already. And he went to the ADs to look at the GMTs, the Batman, the Black, but didn't really like them. They were readily available back then. He wanted the new Pepsi and was hoping to get it, but of course never happened. And he went to Tokyo for his honeymoon. I love Tokyo, but that's not really where I would go for my honeymoon, because well, there's a lot of competition for the wife. But of course, you were in love, and there was only one for you. Yeah, man, I have such fond memories of Tokyo. Uptick got busy back then. Anyway, he failed to pull the trigger on any watch. He came back home, and over the course of 2 years, he went on a buying spree, buying a 14060 pre-ceramic Submariner, no date. He felt the simplicity, weight, aesthetics would resolve all his issue, and it would be a great daily watch. He had the box and paper, and wore it as a daily driver for 6 months. So Andrew is very much a one watch kind of guy, but tends to switch from one to the next, gets tired of it, and it's normal. It's a normal feeling to have. He wore it on the rubber straps, on NATOs, and on the bracelet, but it didn't scratch the itch. He became obsessed with the watch not being unpolished, and he later sold it only to rebuy it, to rebuy another model, unpolished, collector set in 2020. He paid more. And he doesn't wear it that much these days. He feels it's too classic to part ways with, and he's satisfied seeing it in the watch box. Interesting as well, right? You don't have to always wear them, always you can enjoy them in the box, and sometimes your mood changes and you rediscover a watch. And I think when you have a classic like this, if you don't need the money, it's always great to keep your Rolex, and they do look beautiful together, and you see a bit the evolution of your journey as well. Moving on, with my son on the way, says Andrew. He thought it was a great excuse to get another watch from the AD, and he put his name down for the Explorer 2 Polar. It was still reasonable to get one, and he thought it was very stunning. It has a very strong look, that's for sure. I prefer the 5-digit reference when it comes to the Polar. When it comes to the 6-digit reference, I prefer the black one. I really think it's stunning, and I'm thinking about adding it. But as you'll see, for me, who has 17 centimeter wrists, it's testing the limit of the wrist, and it's the same here for Andrew. Anyway, he says it was very different from the rest, and has the good complications. And he was able to get the watch and keep the date open on the registration card to be able to put his son's birth date. Quite nice from the AD to do that. And he wore it on hot summer days. He says it's not the best fitting of watches, as I mentioned. It has a slight overhang on his wrist. I feel his wrist is more suited for the 5-digit references and 39mm type of watches, all the way down to 36. But he enjoys having this piece because it is tied to the sun. To the birth of his son, and he's unlikely to part with it, and will pass it on to his son. Well, you better feed him well, okay? So he can wear the larger maxi case there. I wonder why Rolex, when there, you see Rolex works in mysterious ways, and they've increased the sizes of everything: the Sea Dweller, the Explorer 2, the Submariner a little bit, the Datejust, the Day-Dates, everything. Anyway, after that, in the span of about 3 months in 2019, he purchased a 16710 Coke, a 114270 Explorer 1, and a 16570 Explorer 2 black dial. So the Coke, he got it from a jeweler at a great price, complete set but polished. And after he had serviced and got it back in 2019, late 2019, he didn't like the polish job, so he sold it in 2020 and got an unpolished holes case, so probably pre-2000, 2001, before that, Coke with papers and tags for about the same price. And he later bought a period correct Pepsi bezel and put that on, and he thought he would be happy. One would think so, but happiness is fleeting, as he says, and he hasn't worn it much lately. But again, he admires it in the watch roll, and you're putting together a nice classic Rolex collection, right? And it looks good together. Doesn't mean you enjoy wearing them on a daily basis. The ownership is also a pleasure. After owning 16710, he gained greater appreciation of the simplicity and usefulness of the 116610 LN of the date, the modern version of the Submariner. Next, he bought the complete set 114270. That's the Explorer, the smaller size, from a dealer on Corner 24. He thought it was fitting really well on his wrist, great and simple, but as it often happens with many people with the Explorer, he found it boring, and he wore it for a few months into 2020, but preferred having the 16710 over this model or something else with the date. I go back and forth, but at the end of the day, if I had to keep one watch, it would be my 39mm Explorer. To me, it's just the perfect look on the wrist. Love to wear it at night as well. I like the loomed 369. And the absence of date is a daily trouble for me. I need a date quite often, but I'm ready to make this concession because I love the watch so much. In general, it's true, I prefer to have the Datejust with the date, but if I have to choose one, it would be the Explorer, just because of the fit. And it's something that I read a lot in this message from Andrew. The fit is important for him, and the usability of the watches, and I felt the same. I've had watches of different sizes with different functions, and at the end of the day, it's the one that feels the best on the wrist. That's not too thick, that's not too large, that has the right clasp, the right bracelet. And to me, and in the end, is this the Explorer 2 or the Datejust. Usually I would wear the Datejust more at the office, Explorer 2 more in the evening, at night, and on the weekend. And then when I want to have the Swiss Army knife of watches, I wear my Seedweller 4000. It's a perfect trio of watches, and you add to that a GMT, and that is the perfect combo. Where were we? Then he says finally he hit rock bottom during the fall of 2019. He found an incredible deal on a 16570 in black. Yeah, 2019 you could still have very good prices. So he went for the black one. Of course, he had the white one in the six-digit reference. He left the house in a hurry, leaving his nursing wife and baby to collect it from a local dealer. That's the way to go, man. Sometimes a man has got to do what a man has got to do. Leave the wife with the baby and go get that watch. Hey, it's going to be money down the road for the baby. No worry, you can justify it to yourself like that. He had to send the bracelet for refurbishment. Man, it must have been in really bad condition. I remember my 16570 Polar. It had, lots of scratches, but the bracelet was very, very solid. So I think if there's no problem with how it operates, I wouldn't touch it, because then you're gonna have, if you don't polish the case, it's not gonna look quite right. Of course, if there's any really technical issue, but it's rare with those bracelets. They're very solid. Maybe the clasp could have a little problem, but I wouldn't have it refurbished, polished, or anyway, because it's going to look bizarre with the watch. And that's what I love about those early 2000 or even pre 2000 if you prefer, but I prefer the mid 2000 versions of those Explorer 2s, is that they're very usable, and if they have a bunch of scratches, then you really can use them and not worry about them. I don't even notice the scratches on my more vintage pieces. So he wore the 16510 frequently for much of the year. It's a great model, so usable. It's probably another redundancy in the collection. We can get to that, but yes and no. They're all different in some way. And some people collect many of the same, right? You're not that much into the whole yet. But he really enjoyed wearing the piece over the Polar Explorer 2 because it had less mass. It's much more wearable. You forget about it on the wrist, while the 6-digit reference, you always know it's there, and you look at it thinking, it's beautiful, it's very modern, but at the same time you look at it as well thinking, isn't it too big for me? It's the feeling I have a lot with the Tudor Black Bay GMT. There you go. So it's a very interesting Rolex journey. And what has Andrew learned on the way? He tells me, don't leave Tokyo without buying a watch. I actually didn't even buy a watch all the time, the 3 years I was in Tokyo. I was not really interested. I got interested just as I was leaving, and I was about to buy a Bulgari. Luckily, they didn't even have it. It was sold out. I think it was some black watch, probably a fancy metal. Then Andrew says he started wearing the 116610, the 6-digit Submariner, the Submariner date, again at the start of the pandemic, so about 2 years ago. It has now seen more wrist time than any other watch, and possibly more continuous time on the wrist since he purchased it in 2013. And you see, that's why you don't sell those watches, because even if you favor something else for a while, they're incredibly good watches, and at some point maybe your mood is going to change. But here and there he picks up the other watches, the 16710, the 216570, and the 16570. But he does prefer the Submariner date, and yeah, it puts it all together. You get the modern watch. It's very usable with the date and the rotating bezel. You can time things as well. Wears great, glide lock, loom. It's got everything. At this point, he only really cares about that one and the Polar Explorer 2, so the larger one. Filling in watch slot for each function is a silly notion to me now, and it's something that we've heard in other collections, and I'm saying this more and more, is that you don't have to tick all the boxes. Sometimes but it's a journey, and you gotta scratch the itch. You do it, and then you realize afterwards, I just prefer my more simple watch than this one with this and that complication. And he realized that for him, it's a watch with the date that works the most. True, when you're in finance, I look at my watch more for the date than the time, to be honest. And he's been looking at buying either a pre-ceramic sea dweller. They are still at very good prices. Is the longest produced reference in the Rolex catalog, so that's why there's so many of them. They haven't been able to segment them because they're pretty much all been built the same, not many differences into the dial and the construction, so it's not a bonanza for dealers. Great one. If you can afford it, you can maybe still get the one I have, the ceramic version, 40mm. It's so unique because it's even smaller than the Submariner from the top. And great watch. If you like more modern, to me that's the grade in between the Sea Dweller and the Submariners, which have grown a bit in size. But the pre-ceramic Sea Dweller is great because you seem to enjoy also the classics, the 5-digit references, and it is a great watch to pick up, and it's not going to cost a fortune compared to everything else. It's the one that's a bit forgotten, although there's so many of them. Or he's thinking about going for the 36mm Datejust Wimbledon dial with the fluted bezel and the Oyster bracelet next. I love my Wimbledon, but do give a try. Or maybe you did already and you've decided, but the Datejust 41 is so slim that it doesn't feel like it's 41 at all. To me, it wears fantastic. I enjoy it as much as my 39mm Explorer or 40mm Explorer 2, for example. So give it a chance, but because sometimes I find the 36mm they're just a bit more stubby. I like how the 41mm makes the thickness disappear because it's a larger real estate on the wrist. And then he's looking at an uncle's watch, as they call it in Singapore mostly, two-tone bluesy, but feel it would be more of a retirement piece. Look, we all go back and forth with the bluesy. When we don't have it, we want it. When you have it, you don't. You feel a bit too obnoxious with it on the wrist. To be honest, if I had to start from scratch right now, is the first watch I would pick because it does everything. It's sporty dress, it's a bit flash, but it's very usable. It's got the date and the rotating bezel. It does really everything, and it puts a smile on people's face. I mean, it's so a bit of obnoxious, but it's a wonderful, beautiful watch. And I remember not that long ago, every 80 had the black and the blue, and I've had them in the hand, and the sales guy was telling me, I was preferring the black one, and the sales guy was trying to convince me to get the blue one, and he was right, And they changed it a little bit. Now the writing is in white, and I think I prefer the previous version with the writing in gold. But of course, the previous version has more of the maxi case. Now it's 41mm, but with the slightly larger bracelet and thinner lugs. Looks a bit more like the vintage references, but it's bigger. Not sure which one, but yeah, two-tone bluesy. It's I think it's another itch you have to scratch, and don't sell it too quick. My buddy Barry did that, and sometimes I think he secretly regrets it. But you don't want to be the guy who likes the bluesy, maybe. But we all do love the bluesy. I wouldn't be angry at you at all, Andrew, if you got one in secret and just wear it for yourself. There are watches like that, you know, the two-tone roll eyes. I love them all, and but I would just wear them for myself, you know, under my cuff, and just I don't want people to really see this big explosion of of yellow gold. But it's a great pleasure in itself, and it's fun that Rolex makes those in the end fun watches and very a bit tacky, I guess. So Andrew says, I know we should never sell Rolex, as the pontiff says, but there are things he wouldn't mind moving on from. I've done it, man. I've done it. I've moved on from. Look at my previous video, how to move on from things. Convince yourself to sell. People will say, "I'll never sell Rolex," and they're right. They will keep on going up. But then you can, you know, if you don't want to own too many things, at one point it's too much, right? And there's going to be service cost and everything, and the risk of storing them and getting them stolen. And also, you know, you move on. It's a journey, and you only live once. Don't get, you know, stuck by things. You know, don't let things that tell you what you can and cannot do. Just keep the ones you love the most, like I did, and just move on. Of course, everything is gonna go up. Of course, in 20 years, everything will be more rare, harder to find. But if there are other things you want to purchase, if you want to buy your first Patek, you'll never be able to if you store so much money into the Rolex. So maybe now the market is really hot, and a good time to move on from a few things. It's going to be hard for me to tell you sell this one or that one. It feels like you really love the Explorer 2, so I'm not quite sure why you added the 5-digit reference Explorer 2 with the black dial. I think for you the ideal one would be the 5-digit white dial. But you've made your choice, and it's true that the modern reference is quite an impressive watch, and it's tied up to the birth of your kid. But you know, look around, maybe find one of the last references with the upgraded movement of the white polar 40mm, and maybe you could switch the black one for that. Maybe you could also switch the 6-digit reference for that, and make quite a big change, and just tell yourself, well, it's a very collectible watch that I can enjoy also every day. It's gonna wear great on the wrist. Next, I think the Rolex, the Submariners, you're enjoying the modern one, and I don't think the old one hurts to be owned. I really like especially because there's just 2 lines of text. I always like the look of the 5-digit references, Submariners, and especially this one doesn't have the date, so it is different enough, and I think it offers you a bit of a change in your collection. Now the Pepsi, which is really a Coke, you've changed the bezel. I think it's great. You'll always regret if you let that go. Keep it. One day you will want to wear that for 6 months non-stop, I'm pretty sure, and it's not going to lose its value. Great piece to own, and great to have that complication. Of course, you also already have the Explorer 2s. To me, the one that's most redundant, if you just want to make it easy, maybe it's the black dial Explorer 2, the 5-digit. Maybe you went a bit too far adding that one to your collection, and maybe it's not as much fun as the other ones. The Explorer, personally I prefer the 39mm. Now the prices, of course, have risen. The one you have, it's a classic of classics. Again, doesn't hurt to have it. It brings a little change on the wrist once in a while, and sometimes it's one of those watches that you don't feel like wearing anything else. So when I have my Explorer 2, my Explorer on the wrist, I don't feel like ever removing it. I always feel good with that watch. It's a watch that is perfect in every situation, And yeah, all your watches are tool watches. So sometimes you want something a bit cleaner. So if you love Rolex and you don't have a Datejust, that's a nice one. Um, the Sea Dweller that you thinking of adding is again a very tool. It's a tool of tools really from Rolex. And yeah, maybe if you had the Wimbledon Datejust, then you really will have something more dressy. But I would keep the Explorer. It really is beautiful and different enough from everything else. And yeah, from your Rolex collection, is the only one with Arabic numerals. I think it's a nice addition to have. And your Omega, great, because it brings a lot of color. You get the chronograph. You get a great brand, but it's a bit different than having the Moon watch. Again, nothing wrong with that. So going forward, maybe yeah, try to release a little bit of money, reduce a bit. I would, if you had to part with one, maybe now that the market is quite strong and you can do it making a bit of money, I would maybe let go of the Explorer 2, the black dial. Don't have to, but if you have the Pepsi, Coke Pepsi, it is a bit redundant, especially because you have the Polar. Now going forward, it's very different to own a Rolex from owning a high horology piece, and you have to think whether you can use it. If you're in a warm climate, any watch that's not on the bracelet or on a NATO or rubber, the leather strap is going to damage really quickly, and humidity can seep through those side pushers that Patek is still using. I love the Patek, but I really only wear it inside the office. Outside, most of the time, not very useful. Beautiful watch, but you're only mid-30s. I think I would make a target for your 40s to add something, very mature like that, very nice. Consider Vacheron Constantin. They are really on a roll. Such a great collection, and I think there's no rush. You have a lot of time to try to find the right model. Try different things, see if it's really for you. Consider longer, because I think they feel more solid. Maybe a simple Saxonia with the big date. You like to have the date, and you like the classics. I think a Saxonia with the big date, that one, every time I see it, I just desire that watch. I'm thinking, oh, you have that, what else would you need? It's automatic as well. So very practical, and yeah, you have the practicality of the pusher on the side, so it's very easy to reset the date, so it's no trouble for you. And yeah, I think that would fit really nice in the collection. So do consider that. Instead, it's high horology, it's more rare than the Pateks, more solid, and could work quite well in the collection. Maybe in rose gold. Instead of getting the bluesy, if you can never pull a trigger on the bluesy, maybe a rose gold, black dial, Saxonia date. That would really be super chic at the office, and you can still wear it with jeans, and they build them very, very strong. So there you go, Andrew. Man, thank you for sharing your super journey, and what we've learned is that we never know, right? We didn't know anything 10 years, 5 years ago, even 3 years ago. And who knows what is going to happen, what we all going to like. But for sure, we always going to like Rolex in one form or another. It would be interesting to see in 20 years if everybody has turned its back on the tool watches. Personally, I don't think so. I think those the ones I bought, the ones I'm keeping now, the three that I have are watches for life, because it's the one you fall back on, right? And nobody can fault you for loving Rolex. Many people will say in the comments, "Oh, another Rolex collection," but it's just a great brand. That's why they are number one. And I think if you add something really chic like longer, it's gonna give a whole different look to the collection, elevate it, and justify for the Rolex naysayers the fact that you have so many cool Rolex watches. Your journey is very interesting. Yeah, man, if I could go back 5 years ago, 10 years ago, I'd be a watch millionaire, that's for sure. But that's just the way it goes, and we can't regret it. At the end of the day, you've only bought great watches, and there's just no right, no wrong, right? It's just different moods, and keep what you have, and once in a while just switch it up a little bit. All right, guys, thank you for watching. If you want me to review your collection, share it with the world, because it's a lot more fun than just keeping it to yourself. Send me a message at upticwr@gmail.com. Take care, guys. Thank you for sharing, Andrew. Bye bye.